Hello everybody, it is me, Ashitos Nicolitos. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Ash and I talk about med school, modeling, salsa, hair stuff, anything in between. And I am a rising second year medical student. If you are not new here, welcome back. I'm always happy to have you. I know that it's been a little while since I uploaded a video because the first year of medical school was it was a lot. But yeah, that's actually what I'm here to talk to you about today because I want to walk you through what happened in my second semester of medical school. We already talked about in a previous video what happened with that first semester of medical school. And if y'all know because it was a roller coaster. Yeah, so today I want to get into how the second semester went, just kind of piece by piece. And then after that, at a later point in time, we'll talk about the year as a whole. But yeah, so without wasting any more time, let's get started. Okay, so where do we actually start? I guess we can actually start with academics. How did the second semester go? Because, you know, the first semester was really rough academically. I did end up failing a course. You can see my other videos for that. I'm not going to get into that right now because we're starting off the second semester on a clean slate, coming back from winter break, remediation done, all my failures behind me, right? Okay, yeah, so then we go to the first day of school for the spring semester. In the fall, we took anatomy, we took molecular and cellular genomics, which is really biochem heavy. But in the spring semester, we started off with immunology and pathology, and then we went into physiology, and then after that, we finished with microbiology. Yeah, I think that was, I was there, I promise I was there. I'm pretty sure that was the layout of the land. Yeah, so coming back from winter break, we went right into immunology and pathology. And it was a lot getting back into it. I was still tired from winter break, but things were going okay. I was understanding the material. I was starting to actually enjoy the material, which was kind of fun. And I started to kind of pick myself back up academically. I was meeting with a tutor, twice a week. I had to meet with the learning specialist. I had to check in with my faculty advisor and my wellness advisor. There's a lot that goes on when you do end up failing a class in med school. You got to check in with a lot of people because it's true. I guess they don't want you to fail again. We can get into that whole conversation at another point in time. But yeah, basically, I was receiving quite a bit of support when I went into that first class of the spring semester. And guess what? It turned out okay. It turned out fine. I ended up passing the class. I ended up enjoying the class. I ended up participating in the class. And this was all brand new to me. Yeah, so that was great. And then moving on to the next class, I was like, okay, you know, I'm slowly starting to get my confidence back because after you fail so many times, your confidence plummets. Yeah, so getting confidence back was a huge part of that first course. It was like slowly inching up there. And then we reached the first day of physio, which was the second class that we took for the spring semester. So if we back up just a little bit, we had like a little gap between immunology and pathology where I'm just like, okay, maybe I'm getting the hang of this med school stuff, and when physio started. But in that gap, the physio professor sent us emails talking about, okay, listen, I would highly suggest that you put your extracurriculars on hold, at least for the first week of the class, because it is very difficult and you need the foundations in order to move forward. And so she sent us one email and then she sent us another email saying, I highly suggest that you don't do anything basically besides study for physio in that first week of physio. And I'm just like, oh, she's serious about this. That made me a little bit nervous. I'm not gonna lie, that made me very nervous. Yeah, because I actually did have a lot of like extracurriculars going on in terms of research, SNMA, which I'll get into in a little bit, and just, you know, life. So I was a little bit nervous about that. I'm like, okay, this class sounds like it's gonna be hard. And then come to the first day of class, basically it's over Zoom, and she's telling everybody, yeah, basically the people who fail my course fall into two categories. A, they either are over-involved, they are either involved in other things besides academics, or B, they did not do well in the first semester of medical school with that class called MICG that I mentioned earlier. Oh my gosh, the way that I started sweating when I heard this, I just kind of like got up from my seat because I was in my room. Luckily, Zoom University, I can do that. But yeah, I was pacing back and forth. I was like, oh crap, what am I gonna do? I didn't do well in McG, and I'm also over-involved. It's gonna be terrible. Yeah, so I panicked. I immediately emailed the learning specialist. I'm just like, hey, listen, I did fine in the last class, but I'm really worried about this class coming up. Then I emailed the professor of that course. I'm like, hey, can we schedule a time to meet? Because she said that she suggested that we meet with her if we didn't do well in McG. So I set up that meeting as well, and I was just like freaking out. I'm like looking for tutors. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be terrible. And I'm also just trying to figure out like how can I cut down on other things that are going on outside of academics. Because in theory, and this is something that I struggle with just in general, like in theory, it's easy to be like, oh, just cut down. But then I'm looking at the things I'm involved with SNMA. I was president. I'm like, how do I cut down on being president of this club? You know, like how do I take a step back from there when there are things that come directly to me? Like how do I take a step back from research when I have certain responsibilities and deadlines that I have to hit, and now I have to tell people that I can't meet these deadlines anymore? I'm just like, how do I cut back? I don't know. So yeah, it was a lot. YouTube was, of course, one of the first to go. But just like taking a look at all the things that I was involved with and like trying to figure out like how can I do the bare minimum at least for that first week of physio and like see how it goes. So yeah, I tried my best to cut back on what I could. It wasn't that good, but I did have like a lighter schedule planned out for that first week of physio. And I needed it because it was hard. It was so difficult, and I really didn't think that I was gonna, because it was like McG 2.0 basically in that first week of physiology. And I was freaking out. I was crying a little bit here and there, not gonna lie. But yeah, it wasn't as, like in retrospect, now I can say like it wasn't that bad. But that was actually a really valuable lesson for me, because no other professors, this was now the 4th class that I was taking in medical school, and no other professors ever said like, hey, get your bearings in this first foundational part of this course by like cutting down on other things that you're involved with, and then add them in slowly later on as we go throughout the course. I have to keep reminding myself that all of these extracurriculars that I'm involved with, they're great, but they don't matter if you don't succeed academically with your grades. I was actually able to do really well in physio, and I love that class. Yeah, so just kind of focusing in on physio, it was a hard class. It was difficult because conceptually, like a lot of times people tell you in medical school that it's not difficult, it's just a lot of information being spit at you nonstop. That's true 90% of the time, but then there is that 10% of the time when you have to really think through things, understand like mechanisms behind things and like how like different pieces fit together within the body. Like there are moments where it's just not rote memorization, and physio was definitely one of those moments. So yeah, it was a difficult class, but I did really well in it. I was able to, because we have like these clinical small group correlates, I don't know what you call them, but basically they're called CCSGs, where we go in and we talk about cases and like we just do like that whole group learning type of scenario. And I loved those. I really loved just like talking through physio and like really trying to think through the pressure volume loops and like how the heart works. Honestly, it was amazing. But yeah, so physio went well. So we had immunology and pathology, it went well. Physio, loved it, and it went well. And then the next class after that, which was actually our final class of the spring semester, was microbiology. And I was a little bit weary about how microbiology was gonna went, because when it came to structures in the first semester, y'all know I didn't do too well with that one. It was just rote memorization though. That's all it was. So when it came to microbiology, that's also another thing of you're memorizing bacteria, viruses, fungal infections, parasitic infections, and all that stuff. So yeah, I was already feeling the burnout. I was already worried about, oh my gosh, we're doing rote memorization again. I don't know how this is gonna work. But a new thing called sketchy was introduced into my life. And let me tell you, I am a sketchy fiend. I love sketchy so much, and I wish it was around from like the beginning of medical school, because sketchy is what helps me to just find the love in microbiology, because I love microbiology now. So in my opinion, microbiology, for me, it was one of the easiest classes, and I think that was because of sketchy. Sketchy is basically like an online platform where they have like cool little videos for each like bacteria that you learn, each virus you learn, each fungi you learn, and basically they incorporate little symbols into these videos that kind of represent something, because a lot of fungi share this characteristic, but then there are some fungi that have this characteristic. So you look out for certain symbols in certain videos so you can remember the different characteristics of the different like microorganisms. So I loved sketchy because I'm realizing that I am a visual person. I like videos. So sketchy was just like really speaking to my soul in that way, and I really appreciated it. So aside from being able to use sketchy as like a visual tool and like finally finding a learning tool that like really worked for me, I also just loved the content, because when you start learning about staph epidermidis infections, when you start learning about hepatitis B viral infections and things like that. Those are the types of things that are always showing up in my medical dramas, because I am a lover of medical dramas. I watch House MD, Grey's Anatomy, Chicago Med, who else do I watch? Transplant, a new one on Hulu, The Resident. I watch all of those shows. And so it's like, I feel like micro was really that class where it finally felt like medicine, where like, even if I'm watching, like, I know it's drama, I know it's fake, okay, just don't at me, all right? But I'm just saying, like, when I'm watching my medical dramas and then they start talking about a really high fever, they start talking about meningitis and stuff, now I'm going down my own list of like all of the different like organisms that can cause bacterial meningitis, and I'm just like, I feel like a doctor. And there are, especially on House MD, there are so many episodes where I've been able to just like, bam, diagnosis. Sometimes I do have to pause the video to like think a little bit, and that, I'm sure that annoys my partner quite a bit. But my point is, like, I finally feel like I'm starting to like put things on like differentials and like understand the way that things are working, like from a medical standpoint, a little bit better. So that was micro, and that's why I love micro. Nobody can tell me anything different about micro, I'm sorry. But yeah, so that's academically, that's how the second semester of medical school went. But yeah, so I passed all my classes, and that was a first for me. I found joy in my classes, and yeah, my confidence slowly started to kind of increase. It's not all the way back. I mean, come on, it's medical school. But it's slowly like getting up there, especially from where it was before in the first semester. Now let's talk a little bit about how things went extracurricular wise, because we did speak a little bit about that in terms of the academics. So something that was pretty new in terms of extracurriculars, and that really made a dent in my schedule for the spring semester, was SNMA. So I was involved in SNMA when I first got to med school. SNMA is the Student National Medical Association, and basically it is the organization for Black medical students. We have a chapter here at my school, but then there's also the regional chapter for all the SNMA school chapters in the area, and then there's a national chapter that takes care of all of the SNMAs in the country. Yeah, so what happened in the spring semester when we came back in January is I stepped into a presidential role for my school's SNMA chapter. But basically how it works in medical school is you join a club, you participate in the club for about a semester, and then in the next semester you take over and you hold that position for about a year until the next class comes in, and then they take over. So it's like you see the club, you get to know the club for half a year, and then you are in charge of it for a full year. So it's like there's no progression and like learning and like doing all of this and getting involved. No, it's just kind of like you get thrown in there. So that was rough. That was also very rough, just like learning how to navigate the club, learning what the club can and cannot do, while also being president of the club. So what really caught me off guard with SNMA is it is very time consuming. Easily spending 10 to 15 hours per week just working on SNMA stuff. Which as a medical student, that's a lot of time. And then when we have events, it's even more time than that. And I'm filming this video right now, it's like June, like really early June, mid-June, around there. And SMA is still taking up 10 to 15 hours every week because programming and communication with the regional board and the national stuff and all the forms that have to be filled out and dues that have to be paid. And also Juneteenth is around the corner, and also we want to welcome the incoming students and like start socializing with them. So it's like all of these things still have to get done. We still have like 3 events planned for this month. We have an event planned for next month. It's a lot. Yeah, so that has definitely been time consuming, and it's taught me a lot in terms of like just interacting with different people and conflict resolution. Not all conflicts get resolved, it happens, but it's just definitely, more than anything, it's a learning process. Have I lost sleep over SNMA this semester? 100% yes, I have. Has it stressed me out so much? Yes, it has. Oh my gosh, it is definitely top 2 in terms of med school, and then probably like SNMA is right underneath. Has it been fun? I'll get back to y'all on that later. But yeah, so SNMA is definitely one of those extracurriculars. And then another extracurricular is research, right? Because research definitely picked up more so in the second semester, like really getting more involved in projects and stuff like that. So I was able to do some research in the second semester and actually like kind of finish a paper. It's currently being submitted for publications. The thing about research though in med school is it's another situation where it's just feeling like very awkward and insecure about it, because sometimes like people expect you to know how to do things and it's like, I don't know how to do this. I have no clue how to do this. And like you Google how to do this and like Google isn't always that helpful. So then you ask questions and then sometimes people look at you funny like, I thought you knew how to do this, and I'm just like, I don't know how to do this. So it's like a lot of like, we gonna learn today type stuff. But yeah, and I also have to like keep reminding myself that like this is part of the process. This is part of learning. Learning can be really uncomfortable sometimes, but this is how you move forward. This is how you move up. On like really busy weeks, I would probably spend something like 5 or 6 hours doing research that week. And then there would be some weeks when I didn't do any research or anything related to that project. And would just be waiting for like future directions or like for somebody to review this, yada, yada, yada. So I thought that I was just gonna continue doing the research that I have been doing like throughout the spring semester, basically with the current lab that I'm in. But then I did find out that that didn't qualify technically for what was asked of in like the summer research requirement. So then I had to go on the hunt and try to find another project. And did I hunt for a project? I sure did. It was a lot of emails. It was a lot of showing up to meetings where people are talking about their projects. And I'm just like, how am I gonna find a project for me when all of these people are wrapping up what they're working on and they're not looking for new people? They're basically done with their projects. So I was just kind of like, what am I doing? No. And then also another thing that made it hard to find a research mentor, if you don't have like a solid research background and understanding of like the process of research, that also limits your options a lot in terms of finding a research mentor. But I did eventually find a research project, but let me tell you, it took me so long and I talked to so many people and I ended up saying yes to like 3 or 4 different projects, and like only one of them qualified for like my summer research requirement. But I also am just kind of like, I want to learn. I want to like know how to do all of these things, and like I still want to get exposure to these fields. So I said yes to all of these projects, and now I'm just kind of like, wow, I should have said no. But no, it's okay. It's gonna be all right. And in terms of socializing and like my social life, yeah, in the spring semester, I definitely hibernated a lot more. I mean, I got colder, less people were going out, less temptation. So it was a lot more buckling down, studying, staying in. And I think that also was a huge part of improving my grades, not gonna lie, you know. But yes, so I definitely stayed in a lot more in terms of socializing. And another part of the spring semester that kind of limited socializing is that people got busy. People are now looking for research opportunities for the summertime. People were taking on more roles in terms of exec boards and their own clubs. People were getting more involved in the research that they already had going on. So like people were busy. People didn't have as much time to hang out, and myself included. So that also kind of limited the socializing a little bit more in the second semester, which was also kind of sad because when you had the first semester, especially with the SNMA community, there was a lot of hanging out, and like when we did hang out, like everybody would show up. So like that didn't really happen in the second semester. It would be like, you got a few people showing up on this time, you got a few people showing up next time, but it didn't really get back to that thing of like everybody coming together. And just understanding that it's just like college, you know. In the first year of college, everybody hangs out with everybody. Well, at least that's how my college was. And then in the second and third year, people get their internships, they go away, they do their own thing, they have their different responsibilities, and that just naturally happens. So yeah, that also naturally happened here as well. But of course, there was still time for movie nights, and we had quite a bit of wine and cheese. We did. We still went out to Silvana's, a place that we sometimes go to. But yeah, I think that a huge thing that like really brought people together in the second semester is when we celebrated birthdays. We still did that thing where like we had a birthday celebration, so we had a little cake and like we sang to people, whether it was midnight or like later on in the evening of their birthday. So that was actually able to still like draw in quite a bit of people. I'm hoping that something like that happens next year, but at the same time, I'm like, I understand that people are busy now. People are tired. People are doing their own thing. So socializing in terms of going out, partying, having fun, that definitely simmered down in the second semester. And another thing in terms of socializing, like I would say like a pretty decent chunk of my social life before medical school and like in between college and medical school was modeling. It was kind of dead for me in the spring semester, whereas in the first semester I went to like 4 or 5, 6 shows, and it was pretty busy, especially for like the fashion weeks. But I missed out on the spring fashion week because that was during the first week of physio, and we talked about that already. I had to put a lot of things on hold. And do I have regrets about that? No, not really, because I really enjoyed doing well in classes. Not gonna lie, I really enjoyed that. But I'm thinking now that like summertime is coming, like maybe I can get back into a few photo shoots. I'll really have to think hard about getting back into fashion week come fall semester because that didn't go too well last time. But I'm also different now. I study now. It's crazy. So yeah, that was basically the rundown of my second semester of medical school this spring semester. Long story short, I ended up loving classes. I ended up kind of getting the hang of how to do medical school. I struggled a lot with extracurriculars, and like a huge part of that was just like communication and like learning how to communicate with like different personality styles and like being more clear in terms of my communication. What else happened? I put a little bit of a break on modeling for the time being, but I actually have no regrets about that. YouTube also took a hit, but that's okay because we're gonna get back into it during this summer. I'm telling you, I'm getting there. Just give me some time. And yeah, so that's how my spring semester went. And in my opinion, it was a lot better academically in the second semester than in the first semester. But socially, a lot of things did take a hit in the second semester, which is okay too, because that's just how life goes. Life is not all about partying and having fun. But yeah, so that's all I got for y'all today. But stay tuned because I'm gonna have like another video talking a little bit more in depth about like this whole year as a whole and like the biggest things that I took away from this first year of medical school, because I do got some updates, you know, little things like that. Yeah, so stay tuned. And again, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I hope that you enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below so that I can love you forever. Don't you want that? Okay, great. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, again, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.